They gave my sister a house key for Christmas. Wrapped in gold paper with a satin bow, placed in her hands like she'd earned it, like she deserved it more than air itself. Patricia, my mother, cried. Richard, my father, smiled that proud smile reserved only for Sophia. And me? I got an envelope. Plain, white, no ceremony. Inside was a printout of a job listing. Entry-level admin work at an insurance office, with a note scrawled at the bottom in Richard's handwriting. Thought this might be more your speed. I sat there holding that paper while Sophia squealed about granite countertops and walk-in closets, while Patricia dabbed her eyes and whispered about dreams coming true. Nobody looked at me. Nobody asked what I thought. And when I finally met my mother's gaze, she smiled softly and said, "You'll understand someday, Emily." But I already did. I understood that I would always be the afterthought, the backup plan, the daughter who didn't need love because she'd learned to survive without it. What they didn't understand was that I'd been watching, remembering, and waiting, and someday had finally arrived. I didn't open the envelope right away. It sat in my lap like something fragile and faintly humiliating, a reminder not just of what I lacked, but of how casually they delivered that message year after year. Richard had handed it to me with the same energy he used for junk mail. No eye contact, no warmth, just a quiet, "Here you go," before turning back to watch Sophia's performance. Because that's what it was, a performance. She gasped before even touching the ribbon, held the key up to the light like it was forged from starlight instead of brass and favoritism. Patricia clutched her chest, voice trembling as she announced they'd bought her a house, a whole house, as if Sophia had just been awarded a Nobel Prize. I smiled because my face had learned that shape long ago, a reflex born from years of being invisible in a room full of people who shared my blood. When I finally did open the envelope, I read the job listing twice. Not because I didn't understand it, but because I needed to let the insult settle, to feel the full weight of what they believed I was worth. Entry level, hourly. Near the bottom, Richard had written his note in block letters, all sharp edges and control, like he was doing me a favor. I folded the paper slowly, tucked it under my leg, and let the noise of the room wash over me without reaching me. All I could hear was the scrape of paper against fabric, thin and whispering, reminding me that I would never belong here the way she did. I was 9 the first time I understood. My birthday arrived on a Tuesday, quiet and unremarkable. I came downstairs early, hopeful, thinking maybe there'd be balloons or a card, something small to mark the day. The kitchen was empty. No gifts, no candles, just the smell of burnt toast and Patricia humming in the next room while brushing Sophia's hair for ballet rehearsal. I baked my own. Cupcakes that afternoon, chocolate with too much oil and not enough sugar, and Patricia helped only because she didn't want the kitchen to smell weird later. That same year, Sophia's birthday came with a backyard party. Ponies, a magician, neighbors we barely knew bringing glittery gifts and rehearsed compliments. I stopped expecting anything after that. When I graduated high school with honors, Patricia didn't come. Sophia had a regional dance competition. I got a text that said, "So proud, sorry we couldn't be there, go get them," with a heart emoji that felt like an afterthought. When I placed first at the state science fair with a fully functional hydroelectric dam model, Richard showed up 15 minutes late and left before the award ceremony. He had a golf tee time with someone important. The following week, Sophia landed a 30-second shampoo commercial, and they threw a dinner party with champagne and a framed screenshot like she'd won an Oscar. There's a moment I return to more than I should. Senior year, academic awards night. I'd worked brutally hard, juggling 2 part-time jobs, maintaining a 4.0 GPA, writing papers until my fingers cramped and my vision blurred. They called my name for the top scholarship in front of a packed auditorium. I walked on stage, scanned the crowd, and there she was, Patricia, front row, not clapping, just scrolling on her phone. When I stepped down with the certificate still warm in my hands, she looked up and said loud enough for nearby parents to hear, "Well, at least she's good at something." That sentence sliced through the applause like a blade through silk. Even now, years later, I can still hear it. I used to wonder if I was imagining it all, if I was just bitter, oversensitive, reading too much into normal family dynamics. But favoritism doesn't whisper. It carves itself into holidays and dinners and all the moments where love is supposed to be loudest. That Christmas morning, watching Sophia hold a house key while I held a lifeless envelope, I stopped wondering. I knew exactly where I stood, and I knew something else too. This wasn't the moment to speak, not yet, but it was coming. I hadn't planned on going back. But guilt has a way of disguising itself as duty, especially when your mother calls twice in 1 week using words like your father and hurt, and can't lift boxes without help. It wasn't the request that got me. It was the tone, that syrupy concern layered over unspoken accusation, as if refusing would prove I was cold or selfish, as if decades of quiet dismissal could be erased by one favor on a Saturday. So I said yes. I drove 4 hours home, parked in the same driveway Richard still edged with a ruler and hedge clippers, and stepped into a house that smelled exactly like it always had: lemon polish, overcooked roast, and the faint hint of something burning that nobody acknowledged. Sophia wasn't there. "She's busy," Patricia said with a sigh that somehow made her absence feel like my fault. I smiled, nodded, said the right things. By Saturday evening, we'd completed the checklist, helped Richard move storage bins in the garage, listened to Patricia complain about Sophia's boyfriend, endured a dinner where every topic circled back to lakehouse renovations. By 10 at night, I couldn't sleep. The guest room, the one I used to call mine, still had my old soccer trophies on the shelf like proof I'd existed once. But the walls felt tighter now, like they remembered how many words I'd swallowed inside them. I wandered downstairs barefoot and silent. The door to Richard's office was slightly ajar. That alone was strange. He guarded that room like sacred ground. Lights off, blinds down, locked drawers, passwords on everything. And yet, there it was, open. The safe was tucked behind the file cabinet, small and gray, unmistakably his. And for the first time in my life, the door hung loose. I should have closed it and walked away. I should have assumed it was a mistake. But something held me there, some quiet voice asking what they kept locked away from me that Sophia already knew. I knelt slowly, carefully. Inside were rows of manila folders, all perfectly labeled tax returns, property deeds, bank statements, some familiar, some new. I flipped through them in silence. Then I found it. A sealed envelope, plain white, marked in Richard's handwriting, to be opened upon death. My hands went still. Then I opened it. Inside was a will, not the one I remembered from years ago, when everything was supposedly split evenly. This one was different. My name came first. Next to it, a parcel number, a property I'd never heard them mention. At first I thought it was a mistake, but then I saw the next page, a deed purchased under my name years ago, and below that, a signed authorization transferring funds using my name. The signature was mine, but the slant was wrong. The curl in the capital E didn't match. My breath caught. Someone had forged my signature, and based on the bank activity attached, it hadn't happened just once. My name had been used, moved around like furniture in a room I wasn't allowed to enter. I didn't say anything that weekend. At breakfast the next morning, Patricia poured my coffee with her usual performative cheer, asked if I'd found a real job yet, then launched into a story about Sophia's new podcast idea, something about lifestyle branding and authentic influence. Richard barely looked up from his toast. I smiled, nodded, played the role they'd written for me decades ago. By noon, I was packed and back on the road, citing work obligations I didn't bother to fabricate. The moment I got home, I pulled my credit reports, every account under my name, every flag I'd ignored. It didn't take long. The house, my house, the one they'd buried under layers of silence, was real, purchased 6 years ago, funded through a trust tied to my Social Security number. But that was only the beginning. What followed was a tangled web of financial activity, quiet transfers between internal family accounts, reallocated funds, and at least one authorization bearing a signature that wasn't mine. So I called someone I trusted, a lawyer friend from college who specialized in estate structures. I didn't give her the whole story, just the documents. She called back 2 days later, voice calm but words sharp. Emily, if you wanted to pursue fraud, you'd have a case. But that's not what you want, is it? She was right. I didn't want revenge. I wanted clarity and then control. So we started digging, quietly, carefully. What emerged over the next few weeks was almost absurd in its irony. On paper, I was wealthier than I'd ever imagined, not extravagantly so, but meaningfully. The house, a small investment account I didn't know existed, and ties to a family holding company used to shelter assets during one of Sophia's business ventures. The lakehouse was the most damning detail. That house, their pride, their retreat, their legacy, the place they'd spent every summer for 20 years, had been secretly mortgaged 3 years prior to fund Sophia's failed skincare line. They'd tried to fix it quietly. Richard likely believed he could repay it before the bank came knocking, but he couldn't. By the time I found the deed, the house was already flagged for auction. And that's where it got interesting, because I bought it. Not directly, not as Emily Carter. I set up a shell LLC, used my lawyer as a proxy, and submitted the purchase anonymously through a holding agent. It was legal, clean, undeniable. The paperwork took weeks, but when it was done, I sat there with a deed in my hands, and for the first time in my life, I owned something they wanted. It wasn't about the house. It was about history, about breaking a cycle, about making it unmistakably clear that I had seen every inch of their neglect, and I'd chosen, for once, not to absorb it. They still didn't know. Patricia kept texting about Christmas, asking if I'd be home, if I could bring wine, if I'd heard about Sophia's new boyfriend who worked in tech. Richard emailed me another job listing with the subject line, something with stability, as if I were still the lost child who needed his guidance. And I said nothing, because silence, when it's yours and not forced upon you, isn't weakness. It's power waiting for the right moment. I thought about telling them immediately, about calling and delivering the news over the phone just to hear the pause, the intake of breath, the scramble for words that wouldn't come. But that felt cheap, reactive, like I was still seeking their approval in some twisted way. No, this required presence. It required them to see my face when the truth arrived, to understand that this wasn't impulse or bitterness, but something far more deliberate. So I waited. I responded to Patricia's texts with polite acknowledgments. I thanked Richard for the job listing and said I'd consider it. I played my role one. Last time, the dependable daughter, the one who showed up, the one who never caused trouble. And while I played that role, I watched the calendar counting down the days until Christmas, until the moment when I would hand them a gift they'd never forget. The irony wasn't lost on me. They'd given Sophia a house key wrapped in gold, a symbol of arrival, of having made it, of being worthy of investment. And now I was about to give them something wrapped in truth, the deed to the one place they valued most, signed in my name, purchased with clarity they'd tried to bury. My lawyer asked me once during those weeks if I was sure, if I understood that this might fracture the family permanently, if I was prepared for the fallout. I told her I was, because the fracture had happened years ago, long before I found that safe, long before I discovered the forged signatures and hidden properties. It happened the first time Patricia didn't show up to my graduation, the first time Richard handed me a job listing instead of encouragement, the first time Sophia received applause for existing while I received silence for succeeding. They'd drawn the lines. I was just finally acknowledging them. And when Christmas morning came again, I would be ready. Not with anger, not with bitterness, but with something far more powerful. The quiet certainty of someone who'd finally stopped waiting to be seen and decided to make herself unforgettable. Christmas came again, as it always did. Same wreath on the front door, same chipped reindeer mugs in the kitchen, same fireplace burning just hot enough to make the air feel dry but not warm. It was all so familiar, it felt fake. Sophia was already there, dressed in a new cashmere set, hugging herself like the room owed her applause. Richard stood by the mantel with his usual mug of coffee, eyes scanning the room like he was doing inventory. Patricia floated in and out, humming carols off-key and asking no one in particular if the cinnamon rolls were done enough. I placed my gift under the tree without a word. Plain white box, no ribbon, no glitter, no tag. Just wait. We went through the morning motions. Sophia opened a designer handbag and gasped on cue. Patricia cried. Richard chuckled. There was a toast to new chapters and dream homes. I nodded, sipped coffee, waited, and then it was my turn. I handed the box to Richard gently, like it might break. He lifted it with both hands, surprised by how light it was. Smiled like he already knew it was nothing important. Sophia giggled. Probably socks, she said. Richard opened it slowly, not because he was cautious, but because he was indifferent. He peeled back the lid, saw the envelope sealed in wax. For a moment he hesitated, then broke the seal and unfolded the papers inside. His face didn't change at first, just a tightening around the eyes. Then the color drained. He read the first page again, slower, the notarized deed, my name, the property, the lakehouse. Then the second page, the forged signature, the legal warning from my attorney. His hand trembled slightly. Patricia leaned over his shoulder. She was still smiling when her eyes caught the bolded words near the top of the document. That smile faded like breath on glass. She turned to me. Emily, what is this? I met her eyes, calm. It's exactly what it looks like. She blinked. Richard didn't speak, not one word. Patricia looked back down at the paper, then at him. Her mouth opened, closed, then opened again. You didn't tell me. It wasn't a question. Her voice cracked, not loudly, not theatrically. It broke the way bones do, clean, irreversible. Sophia clutched her purse tighter as if it could shield her. She glanced around, confused. No one explained. No one moved. The silence in the room thickened, dense and slow, like syrup spilled across carpet, uncleanable. I stood up slowly, smoothing the hem of my sweater, and said it lightly, like I was thanking them for breakfast. I won't be sharing the lakehouse, not this time. There was no reply, not even a nod, just the sound of paper shifting in Richard's hands as he tried and failed to make the words mean something else. Patricia took a step back from him like space might soften the betrayal. Her gaze darted between the papers and his face, and in that moment I realized it wasn't just the truth I had delivered. It was the end of a performance they'd rehearsed for years, and the only person who hadn't missed their cue was me. By evening, the snow had started. Soft, steady flakes drifted down in the kind of silence only winter understands, where the air doesn't just fall quiet, it settles. I sat in an old armchair near the window of the lakehouse, my lakehouse, a blanket around my shoulders, coffee cooling slowly beside me. No music, no voices, just the faint creak of wood as the wind moved across the siding. The place wasn't glamorous. It needed new floors. The chimney smoked when it shouldn't. The thermostat clicked 3 times before doing anything useful, but it was mine, and no one had handed it to me. I didn't feel triumphant. No part of this felt like victory. It felt like release, like finally exhaling after holding my breath for years without realizing it. I didn't know if they'd reach out, if Patricia would call with voice heavy and regret carefully timed, if Richard would send one of his articles clipped from the local paper pretending nothing had happened, if Sophia would send a meme pretending we were still close. Maybe they would. Maybe not. I no longer cared. The snow kept falling, slow and certain. Funny thing is, now that I finally own the one thing they cherished most, I don't even want it. But I needed them to know I could take it, just like they took pieces of me year by year, wrapped in silence and called it love. If you've ever left a room and never looked back, just leave a single dot. I'll know you were here.
The clock above the emergency doors didn't move. Or maybe I just couldn't see straight through the fog of tears. A nurse finally came out, slowly pulling off her gloves. She didn't have to say anything. I knew. He was gone. Ethan. My husband. My best friend. One minute he was on his way home from work, the next his heart just gave out behind the wheel. A silent attack. Quick. Cruel. They told me he didn't even feel pain. But I did. I sat alone in a cold hallway chair, shaking, clutching the strap of my purse like it was the only thing keeping me upright. My hands dialed automatically. I needed someone. Anyone. I called my mom. "Mom, it's Ethan." I choked out. "He's gone. He's gone. Can you please come? I can't do this alone." There was a clatter of dishes in the background. Laughter. Music. Then her voice. "Oh, honey, we're at your sister's birthday dinner right now. Can it wait until tomorrow? Everyone's here, and we just brought out the cake." I didn't respond. Couldn't. She said, "Try to get some sleep, all right? We'll check in soon." She hung up. They never showed. Not that night. Not the next morning. Not even at the funeral home. I signed papers. Chose the casket. Explained death to our 8-year-old daughter, Claire. All on my own. 3 days later, they came. No hugs. No flowers. Just polite nods and pitiful faces. Then Mom sat on the couch and said, "So, did he leave you everything? I mean, legally speaking, inheritance can get tricky, especially with family involved." Dad added, "You know we helped with that down payment back then. It's only fair we get our share now that things are being sorted." Claire was standing by the doorway, silent as a ghost. She disappeared for a moment, then came back holding a white envelope with shaky hands. "Here," she said, stepping toward them. "That's why you came, right?" They froze. Mom took the envelope slowly, her fingers trembling. Inside was a letter, one I had prepared, one that explained everything they needed to know about the will, the trust, the reality of what Ethan left behind. But Claire didn't wait for their reaction. She walked back toward me, took my hand, and said, "Can we go home now? My name is Anna Graves. And from wherever you're watching this video, stay with me. Because losing the love of your life is a kind of death. But being forgotten by your own family? That's the part that doesn't stop hurting. I used to believe that if I did everything right, they'd see me. That if I got the good grades, stayed quiet, didn't cause problems, they'd finally look at me the way they looked at her. My sister, Lily. The golden girl. The one who got the new dresses, the extra dessert, the louder cheers at graduation. Even when she barely passed. She had a laugh that made people turn their heads. I had a quiet voice they forgot in the car. When I met Ethan in college, I finally felt seen, not just looked at, but seen. He wasn't flashy. Not a six-figure guy or some brilliant entrepreneur. He worked as a paramedic. Came home smelling like hospitals and kindness. He listened when I spoke. He held space when I cried. But to my parents, he was a waste of potential. "He's just average, Anna. Don't you want something more? I mean, what can a man like that really give you?" They refused to come to our wedding. Said it was too sudden. We eloped anyway, in a small garden, just the two of us and Claire growing in my belly. He kissed my forehead and promised me that no matter who showed up, he would never leave my side. A month later, my parents threw Lily a massive engagement party, complete with ice sculptures, monogrammed napkins, and a fireworks display. They posted it all on Facebook. Never once messaged me to ask how married life was going. When Claire was born, I sent them photos. Weeks passed, no reply. Eventually, they came to visit. My mom held Claire like she was made of glass, smiled politely, and said, "She's sweet. Looks more like Ethan than you, though." They never called on birthdays. Never asked what she liked. When Lily's twins were born, my parents had a nursery built in their home. Claire noticed, of course. "Kids always do. Why don't Grandma and Grandpa want to play with me?" she once asked. I told her, "They're just busy, baby." But I knew the truth. We didn't fit their picture. We weren't loud or polished or impressive. We were just quietly happy. And in my family, that wasn't enough. So Ethan and I built something without them. Sunday pancakes. Backyard sprinklers. Grocery store dance parties. We didn't have much, but it was full of love. Real love. And when he died, the only arms that held me were Claire's. Not my mother's. Not my father's. They were too busy icing a cake and clapping for Lily to hear my heart break. When they finally showed up, it wasn't for me. It wasn't for Claire. It was for what they thought they deserved. Even after death, I still came second. Grief doesn't move in a straight line. It stumbles, stops, swallows you whole. For the first week after Ethan died, I moved like a shadow. I planned the funeral alone, choosing the casket, the flowers, the song he once said he wanted played, if anything ever happened. Claire watched me carefully. She didn't cry much at first, just followed me from room to room, holding my hand like she was the one keeping me upright. My parents didn't send flowers, didn't offer to help. Lily posted a black and white selfie with a caption, "R.I.P. to my sister's husband. Life is short. Love your people, broken heart." She spelled his name wrong. The day of the funeral, my parents arrived 10 minutes late. They sat in the back, left immediately after. Didn't say a word to Claire. That night, the silence in our house felt different. Not just empty, but vacant. I was pouring tea 2 days later when my mom called. Her voice was soft, gentle even. "Hi, sweetie. How are you holding up?" I almost cried hearing that tone from her. Almost. Until she added, "We were wondering if maybe we could stop by, just to talk." They came the next morning, dressed like they were meeting a banker. My dad even wore a tie. We sat in the living room, where Ethan's slippers still sat near the fireplace. We were just thinking, my mom started, Ethan had a lot going on. A house, some savings, right? We know he wasn't rich, but... She trailed off, looked at my father. Dad cleared his throat. "It's just that, technically, we are family. And with things like this, it's always good to be transparent. About what's left. About how it might be divided." My heart didn't break. It hardened. They didn't come to check on us. They didn't ask how Claire was sleeping. They didn't even say they missed him. They came for money. "I'm sorry," I said, swallowing everything I wanted to scream. "Are you asking if Ethan left you something?" Mom gave a tight smile. "Well, I mean, we helped with things over the years. The down payment, remember? And it's only fair." Claire was in the hallway, frozen, holding her sketchbook. They didn't see her, but I did. That night, she climbed into bed with me and whispered, "They were talking about Daddy's money." I nodded, gently stroking her hair. What did they mean by split fairly? I swallowed hard. Nothing that matters to us, baby. But in my heart, something shifted. They hadn't lost a son-in-law. They didn't mourn him. They didn't even really know him. They just saw his death as an open door. They came with fake sympathy, but what they really brought was a calculator. And that's when I knew. They didn't lose a person. They saw a payday. I never believed in revenge, not the loud kind. The kind that screams and breaks and burns things down. But silence? Silence is a different kind of fire. The morning after their visit, I called Ethan's lawyer, Mr. O. A quiet man with kind eyes who once said, "Ethan may not be rich in money, but he's rich in preparation." He was right. Ethan had left everything in order. A living trust, a detailed will, Claire's college fund, life insurance, emergency documents. He'd protected us, even in death. Mr. Rowe met me in his office with a folder already labeled, Anna Graves and Claire, personal and confidential. We went through everything, page by page. Ethan had left every cent to Claire, with me as the sole trustee. Nothing to my parents. Nothing to Lily. No loopholes. No drama. And now, I was making sure it stayed that way. "I want to add an addendum," I said. "A clause that states that no one, not even blood relatives, can contest any part of this estate." He nodded. "It's your right. And it's smart." I added more. Updated beneficiaries. Closed every financial window they might crawl through. Then I went home and started building my file. I created a folder. A real one, physical, thick and locked. Inside, a copy of the will. Statements from the trust. A letter addressed to whom it may concern, detailing the harassment. Screenshots of my parents' messages. And one handwritten note from Ethan I'd been saving. Whatever happens, protect Claire first. She's our legacy. I wasn't angry anymore. I was ready. That night, as I sat at the kitchen table sorting papers, Claire came into the room. She was holding her stuffed bear and rubbing her eyes. "What are you doing, Mommy?" "Just organizing things," I said softly. She looked at the papers. Then at me. They're coming for what's not theirs, huh? I paused. She wasn't a baby anymore. She was watching, learning. I closed the folder, walked over, and knelt in front of her. Yes, I said, but they'll leave with what they deserve. She nodded once, like she understood more than an 8-year-old should. I pulled her close, kissed her forehead, and whispered, "And you, my love, you'll get everything your daddy wanted for you." They rang the doorbell, like guests, like people with a right to knock. My parents stood outside with a Tupperware container of lemon cake and the kind of smiles people wear at church funerals. Polished. Practiced. Empty. "Hi, sweetie," my mom said. "We just wanted to check in. See how you're coping." I let them in, not out of kindness, but because I wanted them to see what they'd never really looked at, the home Ethan built with his hands. The framed crayon drawings Claire made for Father's Day. The pictures on the mantel, of laughter, not luxury. They sat stiffly in the living room, commenting on the new rug, the scented candles. Then Dad cleared his throat. "I know this is a difficult time," he began. "And we want to be respectful, but we also want to make sure things are handled fairly. Ethan was part of our family, too." Mom nodded quickly. "And I just can't help but wonder what he would have wanted. Surely he'd want to honor all the people in his life." That was when Claire entered the room. Quiet. Calm. Holding a sealed white envelope with both hands. She walked straight to them. "This is for you," she said. "That's why you came, right?" They blinked, stunned. Mom took the envelope with shaking fingers. Opened it slowly. Inside, a certified copy of Ethan's will, stamped and signed. Every asset legally bound to me and Claire. A trust document with Claire's name etched in bold, undeniable letters. And one photo. It was a picture of me at 5 years old, sitting on my childhood bed, arms crossed, tears in my eyes. My mother sitting beside me, looking at her phone. Attached was a small sticky note. "This is the last time you ever held me. Don't pretend to care now." The air left the room. Mom's lips parted, but no sound came out. Dad looked pale, like he'd seen a ghost. Claire stood tall, voice steady. Daddy left everything to the people who truly loved him. That's what he wanted. They didn't argue. Couldn't. The truth had come wrapped not in fire, but in paper. Unshakable. Legal. Cold. And most of all, earned. They placed the envelope back on the coffee table and stood. I didn't walk them to the door. Claire didn't say goodbye. The only sound as they left was the slow creak of the floorboards, like the house itself had waited years for them to leave. The storm came the next morning. Not rain, not thunder, just a barrage of angry texts and voicemails. My mom's voice, high-pitched and furious. "How dare you humiliate us like that, after everything we've done for you?" Dad's message, cold and clipped. "You think this is over? Just wait until the family hears what kind of daughter you are." They'd finally read every page of the documents Claire handed them, and they didn't find loopholes. They found locks, airtight, ironclad, untouchable. So they did what manipulators do when control slips. They performed. Lily called next, sighed dramatically, and said, "Look, I'm not trying to pick sides, but they are our parents. They raised us, fed us. Maybe just give them something? Anything?" I didn't yell. I didn't defend. I asked one question. "Do you remember your wedding?" She paused. "Of course." "Do you remember the $30,000 they spent on the venue? The designer dress? The private chef?" "Yeah." "And the down payment on your first home?" Silence. "I paid for my own wedding," I said. They didn't even show up. Ethan and I slept in a borrowed motel room that night. No gifts. No calls. More silence. "They raised you. They tolerated me." That was the last time Lily called. But the story didn't stay quiet. Our cousin Leah, blunt, unfiltered, texted me after seeing the scene unfold in our extended family group chat. "Your mom's trying to say you stole from the family. But I saw the documents. Claire's name is on everything. Ethan protected you. I respect that." Others reached out, slowly, carefully, some offering support. some apologizing for never seeing the favoritism. They'd always thought I was just distant. Now they understood I was surviving. Mom and Dad tried to spin it. Anna turned cold after Ethan died. She's poisoning the child against us. She's unstable with grief. But their story unraveled just like their grip. Every move they made now reeked of desperation. They showed up at family events and were met with polite nods, not warm hugs. They told their version of things. And no one clapped. Because I never fought back. I never raised my voice. I never dragged them through the mud. I didn't have to. The truth was louder than anything they had left. And in the silence they used to ignore me with, they now sat alone, isolated, humiliated, not because I destroyed them, but because they finally had to live in the world they built without me. We moved in early spring. The new house wasn't big. Just 2 bedrooms, a small garden, and a porch that creaked when Claire jumped too hard on it, which she did often. But it was ours. No ghosts. No shadows. No obligations. We painted Claire's room light blue. She taped her drawings to the wall. In the evenings, she'd sit by the window and read, the way Ethan used to. Sometimes I caught her whispering to the sky, like she was telling him about her day. She started thriving at school, winning art contests, raising her hand in class, laughing with that wide-open mouth she always used to cover. Her teacher once told me, "Claire has a calm confidence I rarely see in kids." I smiled. She gets it from her dad. But I was changing too. One morning, I walked into the community center and left a sticky note on the board. Grieving isn't weakness. Come sit with someone who gets it. 5 women showed up that Friday. Then 9. Then 15. It wasn't formal, just tea, folding chairs, and honesty. We didn't compare losses. We just shared them. And slowly I stopped drowning. Late one night, I wrote out everything that had happened, from the hospital call to the envelope Claire handed over. I posted it anonymously on a women's support forum under the title, "They came for the inheritance. My daughter gave them the truth." Within hours, it went viral. Comments flooded in, women from all over the world writing, "This is my story too. You gave me courage. Your daughter's a lion, just like her mother." I didn't respond to all of them, but I read every word. And then I did something that made me cry for an entirely different reason. I opened a scholarship in Ethan's name, the Ethan Graves Foundation, for daughters who were ignored. It offered small annual grants to girls raised in toxic homes, money for books, therapy, even an escape fund. The first recipient was a teenager who left a note with her application. I never thought someone would build something for people like us. But Ethan had. He just didn't know it yet. I framed one of his old photos, the one where he's holding Claire on his shoulders, both of them laughing, faces tilted to the sun. It sits on my nightstand. That night, I picked it up, kissed the glass, and whispered, "I told you I'd protect her." The auditorium was filled with clapping hands, proud families, and stage lights that made everything glow. Claire stood at the podium in her navy blazer, reading her acceptance speech with a voice so steady and sure, it gave me chills. She was 14 now, taller than me, braver than I ever was at her age. She had just received the Young Leader in Arts and Advocacy award for organizing a mural project in the city's underserved schools, each piece representing a child who felt forgotten, unheard, unseen. My daughter turned pain into paint, just like her father turned quiet into strength. As she stepped down from the stage, her eyes scanned the crowd until they landed on me. She smiled. A real, proud, healing smile. I stood and clapped with everything I had. And then, like a ghost that didn't know when to leave, my phone buzzed. Mom. The name lit up the screen, and for a second, I just stared at it. I hadn't blocked her. I didn't need to. Let her see the life she chose to walk away from. Without a second thought, I silenced the call and slid the phone into my purse. Outside, the sky was soft and golden, like it knew what the moment meant. Claire walked beside me, holding her little glass award. "Mom," she asked gently, "do you ever miss them?" I didn't answer right away. I wanted to be careful with the truth. Finally, I said, I miss the parents I wished I had, but I don't miss who they really were. She nodded. No sadness, just understanding. We stopped at the top of a small hill behind the venue. From there, we could see the mural she helped paint, bright, brave colors wrapping around an otherwise gray building. There were no portraits of villains. Just strength, just memory, just forward motion. Claire turned toward me. Did Daddy ever think we'd end up okay? I smiled through the lump in my throat. He knew we would. He made sure of it. She leaned into me, and together we walked toward the parking lot, the light stretching long and warm behind us. And as our footsteps faded into the glow of the evening, I thought of everything we'd lost and everything we'd built from that loss. The noise faded, the drama died, and what remained was ours. Because some people come for the inheritance, but love, that's never for sale.
My wedding dress was hanging in the living room, glowing softly under the sunlight that poured through the window. Ivory lace, hand-stitched sleeves, delicate but strong. Just like I wanted to feel on the day I finally became a bride. I'd invited my family over to see it. Just a small moment. Something I thought we'd remember. My dad walked in first, followed by my sister Ivy. She barely looked at me. Her eyes went straight to the dress. I was beaming, heart full. "Isn't it beautiful?" I asked. Dad didn't smile. He sat down, quiet, heavy, like he was about to deliver bad news. And then he did. "I've been thinking," he said, carefully. "It's your duty to consider what's best for the family. Ivy's been struggling." Ivy tilted her head, smiling like the cat who already swallowed the canary. Dad continued, "She's always been special. You know that. This wedding, maybe it should be hers." My ears rang. I thought I misheard. I blinked. "What are you talking about?" "She's fragile," he said. "You've always had more strength. You can get married anytime. But Ivy, she needs this now." I stared at him, then at her. And Ivy had the audacity to shrug and say, "He's a good man, Ratch. I think he'd be happier with me." She was talking about Lucas. My fiancé. My wedding. No shame. No guilt. And my mother? Silent. Not even in the room. Like she knew what was coming and didn't want to look me in the eye. They weren't asking me to share something. They were asking me to give it up. All of it. The venue I picked. The date I chose. The man I loved. And what's worse, they thought I would. Because I always had. I looked down at the engagement ring Lucas had picked with shaking hands and more love than anyone in that room had ever shown me. I looked back up. My voice didn't shake. "Okay," I said quietly. "You can stop planning. Because none of you are coming." Ivy blinked. "What?" "You're uninvited," I said. "All of you." Then I picked up the dress, my dress, walked out of my childhood home, and shut the door behind me. My name is Rachel Moore. And from wherever you're watching this video, stay with me. Because when they tried to give my wedding to my sister, I didn't just take it back. I took everything they thought I'd sacrifice. I've spent most of my life being asked to understand. Understand Ivy's condition. Understand Ivy's moods. Understand that Ivy can't handle pressure the way you can. I was 5 years old when I first noticed it. Ivy had a meltdown in the grocery store because they were out of the cereal she liked. She screamed, kicked the cart, threw herself on the floor. My mother turned to me and said, "Rachel, can you be a big girl and let her have your snack too? You know she's sensitive." That's what I was raised to be, the big girl. The one who gave up her portion. The one who didn't complain. The one who understood. When Ivy didn't want to share a room growing up, I was moved to the attic. When she failed her driving test, they blamed the instructor. When she dropped out of college after 2 semesters, my parents paid for her wellness retreat with the money I had been saving for my first apartment. I didn't protest. Not once. Because every time I tried, I was told the same thing. It's not her fault. She's delicate. You're strong. She needs more support than you do. And I believed it. I really did. I bent. I adjusted. I minimized my own wins so they wouldn't outshine her. When I got into grad school, my parents asked me not to post about it. It might make Ivy feel like she's falling behind. So I didn't. I celebrated quietly. Alone. When Ivy's Etsy shop failed, I helped pay off her vendor debt. When she totaled her car, I co-signed a lease for a new one. When she wanted to move to LA to find herself, I let her crash in my apartment while she figured things out. She stayed for 8 months, didn't pay rent once, used my skincare, took my clothes, flirted with my coworkers. But I was always reminded she's family. She's special. She didn't mean it. So when my dad asked me to hand her my wedding, my fiancé, my joy, I shouldn't have been surprised. They'd trained me for that moment my entire life. And I almost did it. Out of reflex. Out of habit. Out of guilt. But something about the way Ivy smirked, the way she sat there, already imagining herself in my dress, woke something up in me. A voice I hadn't heard since childhood. And it said, "You've given them everything. This time, keep something for yourself." Lucas didn't say a word when I told him. He just sat across from me on the couch, hands steepled, jaw tight, as I repeated the words my father said. "It's your duty. Ivy's special. Give her your wedding." And then I added Ivy's part. He'd be happier with me anyway. Lucas blinked. Slowly. Like he was trying to process whether he was angry or just disgusted. Then he said, "Did they forget I was part of this wedding?" I shrugged. "I think they never thought of you as a person. Just part of the package." He leaned forward. "Rachel, I love you. I asked you to marry me. I don't care what they think." "I know," I said softly. But it wasn't about what Lucas thought. It was about what they never did. The next few days felt like slow-motion freefall. Ivy posted a photo on Instagram. Her in my wedding dress. My dress. Captioned, "Trying something new. Manifesting what's meant to be ring sparkles." It wasn't just cruel. It was calculated. She had no shame. She truly believed she could have whatever she wanted because she always had. And then the messages started. My aunt texted, "Can't you just let her have this one moment? She's struggled her whole life." A family friend commented under my engagement photo, "Weddings come and go, but sisters are forever. Be the bigger person, Ratch. Be the bigger person." I could write a book called That Phrase Killed Me. Even my mother, who hadn't spoken since the whole thing began, called me one night and said, "You know Ivy doesn't cope well with disappointment. Please don't escalate things." Escalate things? I just uninvited them from my wedding after they tried to hand it to my sister like a spare piece of jewelry. But that was the pattern, wasn't it? Me protecting Ivy from pain. Me being reasonable. Me giving up and giving in. And all the while, no one noticed I was grieving the loss of my own joy. My own ceremony. My own family. They didn't see me crying in the bathroom. Or how I returned the original invitations in silence. Or how I told the florist to put the order on hold, without a refund. They were blind to my joy because they never thought I was entitled to it. And that was when the rage cooled. And clarity took its place. I wasn't going to yell. I wasn't going to argue. I was going to disappear from their narrative and write one where I was no longer the footnote to Ivy's chaos. 2 days after the Instagram post, I deleted every trace of my original wedding plan. The shared calendar? Gone. The guest list spreadsheet? Wiped clean. The family WhatsApp group? Muted. Then archived. And then I sat at my laptop with a fresh document and typed 2 words. Start over. Lucas sat beside me. No pressure, no questions. Just support. We began reimagining our day, not around what was expected, but around what we actually wanted. A smaller ceremony. Outdoors. Intimate. No crowd of judging relatives. No parents who saw me as a spare part. No sister who thought she could wear my dress and steal my future. We changed the date. Moved the venue to a private estate 2 towns over, one Ivy would never think to look up. We chose a sunset time slot. We rebooked a new photographer. We reprinted invitations with a whole new vibe. But most importantly, we made a new guest list. People who had loved us well. Friends who called to check in, not just to gossip. My mentor from college. Lucas's childhood best friend who once said, "You're the first person who makes him breathe easier." We sent invites directly. No public posts. No mailing lists through family. We told guests, please don't share. This wedding is sacred.
And it was.
Not because it was grand, but because it was finally ours. My dress, my vows, my joy, untouched by guilt. I even picked a new song for the walk down the aisle. A softer one. One that felt like a goodbye to everything I used to carry. The day before our wedding, I sent one final message. To my parents. To Ivy. It said, the wedding has moved. You will not be receiving the new location. There is nothing left for you to take. I don't need your blessing. I just needed your absence. I didn't send it to hurt them. I sent it to reclaim something I didn't even realize I had surrendered. My name. My love. My voice. And as Lucas kissed my forehead that night and whispered, you ready for tomorrow? I smiled and said, I've never been more ready for anything. The original wedding date arrived like a storm cloud waiting to burst. Ivy posted a photo of herself that morning, sipping coffee, face full of makeup, captioned, today's the day, as if she'd manifested her way into someone else's life. My father reposted it on his story with, proud of my girls. Big day for the family. Lucas and I saw it from the dressing room of our real wedding venue, a sun-drenched garden lined with white orchids and soft lanterns. I was already in my gown. A new one. Simpler.
Softer. Mine.
No family heirlooms. No veil borrowed from a mother who didn't defend me. Our officiant was a friend who'd known Lucas and me since we were just co-workers eating lunch out of paper bags. The seats were filled, but only with people who knew what we'd survived. Who knew this wasn't just a wedding. It was a reclamation. While I was adjusting my bouquet, my phone buzzed. It was a message from a florist. Hi, Rachel. Just confirming we canceled the arrangement at the old venue per your request. Some guests still showed up confused. I pictured it, my father, standing in a dark, undecorated ballroom, waiting for a wedding that would never happen. Ivy, dressed in my first gown, holding a bouquet she arranged herself, wondering why the music never played. And then another message popped up from an old high school friend who I hadn't invited. Hey, your sister's having a meltdown outside the Elmview Hotel. She's screaming at the staff saying it's her wedding and everyone's late. I handed the phone to Lucas. He read it, laughed once, then kissed my hand. You ready? He asked. I nodded. We walked toward the archway, lined with friends who stood as I entered, not out of obligation, but joy. I never once thought about who wasn't there, because I finally realized you don't need the people who taught you to disappear. You need the ones who help you take up space. After the ceremony, we posted one photo. Just one. It was us under the lanterns, holding hands, smiling without fear. The caption read, surrounded by love. No guilt invited. No mention of what happened. No retaliation. Just truth. The comment section filled fast. You look so peaceful. This is what happiness looks like. Real love doesn't come with terms. My father didn't comment. My mother didn't call. Ivy deleted all her posts by the end of the night. And I danced. For the first time, not because I was expected to show up, but because I chose to. And that made all the difference. The fallout didn't happen immediately. That would have been too easy. It trickled in one awkward message at a time. My cousin Josh texted first. Hey, were you actually married this weekend? I thought I was going to Ivy's wedding. Then my dad's coworker commented under our photo. Congratulations, Rachel. Beautiful wedding. Surprised your folks didn't mention the change. Publicly, my family tried to spin it. They claimed I had a breakdown, that I changed the wedding plans without telling anyone. Ivy posted a crying selfie with a caption. Some people would rather see you sad than see you shine. I'll rise anyway. But the story didn't stick. Because while they were busy managing optics, the truth was unraveling everywhere. Guests from the original wedding day started sharing what they saw. Ivy throwing a tantrum in the hotel parking lot. My dad yelling at the hotel staff for not fixing it. My mom sobbing on a bench, whispering, she actually did it, she went through with it. Meanwhile, my real guests were posting joy, laughter, candids. dancing under fairy lights. People noticed. And people talked. Relatives who had once sided with my parents quietly reached out. One aunt messaged me. "I'm sorry. I see it now. I should have spoken up years ago." Even friends of Ivy's started distancing themselves. Screenshots of her messages trying to recruit sympathy were shared in group chats. She stole the wedding. That was meant to be mine. But all anyone could ask was, wait, wasn't that her sister's fiancé? She tried to take her man? The shift was delicious. Not because I craved revenge, but because justice doesn't always need an audience. Sometimes it just needs silence. The kind of silence I gave them when they showed up at the wrong place. The kind of silence I gave them when they realized the power had shifted. The kind of silence they used to punish me turned into my most powerful weapon. Then, one rainy afternoon, Ivy showed up at my doorstep. Makeup smudged, eyes red, dress clinging to her like a ghost she couldn't shake. She held out her phone. "You've ruined everything. I can't go anywhere without people whispering." I didn't move, didn't flinch.
She sobbed.
I just wanted to be seen. You always had it together.
I didn't know how to be that.
For a brief moment, I almost felt pity. Almost. Then I said, "You didn't want to be seen, Ivy. You wanted to take. And you thought I'd let you again." I stepped back and closed the door.
Gently.
Without a single word more. Because sometimes closure isn't a conversation. It's a door that stays shut. I used to think that healing would look like forgiveness. Like mended ties. Reunions. Smiling family dinners. But I learned that sometimes healing means never going back to the same table where they served you shame and called it tradition. After the wedding, I went quiet online. No long posts. No explainers. Just peace.
And it was loud in its own way.
Lucas and I spent our honeymoon hiking through forests in silence, cooking meals barefoot in a cabin, making promises without pressure. No parents. No drama. No guilt. Just joy that didn't ask for permission. When we got home, I legally changed my name to Rachel Moore. Not because I didn't value my family name, but because I needed to build something that was mine. Unedited. Untouched.
Free.
I started journaling again. Then blogging. What began as a quiet online diary turned into something bigger. A digital space for women like me. For the daughters told to be smaller. For the sisters erased in the shadow of the fragile one. I called it Uninvited. Every post was raw. No fluff. No fake empowerment quotes. Just honesty.
Posts like,
They didn't ask me how I was. They just asked me to step aside. Love that comes with a receipt isn't love. It's a transaction. Sometimes the strongest thing you can do is shut the door without slamming it. The response was overwhelming. Emails, DMs, women from around the world writing. "You told my story. I didn't know anyone else felt like this." Your wedding post gave me the courage to call off mine. I started getting invited to speak on panels, podcasts, community events. Not as the girl who got walked over, but as the woman who finally stood up. Lucas would listen from the back of the room, eyes warm, never needing to be the center of anything, because he knew I'd had enough of being erased. He'd squeeze my hand and whisper, "There she is." And I'd smile, because for the first time in my life, I recognized the woman everyone was seeing. Not the fixer. Not the giver. Not the sacrifice. Rachel Moore. Unedited. Our first anniversary arrived on a quiet Sunday. No grand plans. No crowds. Just me, Lucas, and the life we built on the ashes of everything they tried to take. I spent the morning planting jasmine in our backyard. The same flower that had lined the aisle at our wedding. It's strange how something as delicate as a petal can remind you of power. Of softness that stood its ground. We didn't go out that night. We stayed in, slow-cooked dinner, played old vinyls, danced in the living room. Lucas held me close and whispered, "1 year, and I'd still choose you in a room full of chaos." I laughed. "Let's not invite the chaos this time." He kissed my forehead.
Deal.
Later, as I sat scrolling through old photos from that day, I stumbled upon one I hadn't posted before. Me, walking down the aisle alone, head high,
Dress flowing.
sunlight kissing my cheek. No father to give me away. No sister waiting to interrupt. Just me, reclaiming the space I was told I didn't deserve. I posted it with a short caption. The day I chose myself. Minutes later, a message pinged in my inbox. It was from someone I didn't know. Her name was Maya. She wrote, I found her blog 3 months ago. I was planning a wedding I didn't even want, just to please a family that never really saw me. Then I read your story. I canceled everything. I thought I'd feel like a failure, but instead, I feel free. Thank you for showing me what choosing yourself can look like. I stared at the message for a long time, because that's what this had always been about. Not revenge, not exposure, not even vindication, but freedom. Freedom from family dynamics that shrink you. Freedom from guilt disguised as love. Freedom from applause that only comes when you're giving more than you can bear. That wedding? It didn't just unite me with Lucas. It saved me. It gave me a door to walk through, one that I didn't have to leave open for anyone who didn't respect it. And now I know this. The most powerful vows are the ones you make to yourself. To stop begging for space. To stop funding your own pain. To stop confusing being the bigger person with being the silent one. They thought taking my wedding would break me. But in the end, it made me whole. Because what they tried to ruin became the beginning of everything I was always meant to be.